This is David Lindsay from Phantom Leap Education. The one reason you're not as productive as you could be. There are many reasons why an individual does not take action to move closer towards their goals. All of them could be simplified into either laziness or perfectionism. I won't address incompetency, as I'm more interested in those with the abilities and yet choosing not to execute. However, even if an individual is aware of which category they fit into and decide to push through, they may inevitably run into one problem: psychological pain. Some critics would argue that the main reason is laziness. So let's examine this first. The term lazy originated from a German word lazic, meaning languid or idle. Wharton Business School's professor of organisational psychology Adam Grant defined languishing as the feeling of joyless and aimless, a sense of stagnation and emptiness, a void between depression and flourishing. Similarly, the dictionary defines idle as avoiding work, without purpose or effect, spending time doing nothing. These caricatures are primed to encourage toxic perspectives to which an individual will be judged when exhibiting these traits. They don't explain the deeper issues and don't address the root cause. For example, why do you have feelings of joyless or emptiness sometimes? Why do you find yourself spending time doing nothing? We all strive to be rational and upright humans. Therefore, we should not allow our cognitive biases to judge someone by their action or behaviour. I refuse to accept our inability to understand that each of us have different lives and are going through different issues and difficulties at any given time. If we understand this, why is it so easy for us to label someone or even ourselves as lazy? Why do we let our thoughts roll down the convenient track that we have subconsciously created many years ago? If we want to understand ourselves and progress towards our goals, we must start simplifying and weaponizing concepts into a single terminology that cannot explain its etiology. This will stop us from labeling ourselves or someone else as lazy and forces us to be more considerate as to why a person behaves like this. Are they feeling joyless because of the passing of a family member that robs them of joy? Are they feeling stagnant and empty because the work is no longer challenging? Or are they spending time doing nothing because they have yet to figure out what their purpose is? Would you reasonably classify and place blame on any of these behaviours as unwilling to work or lazy? Social psychologist Devon Price, PhD, argued that there's no such thing as laziness because by nature, every individual has a built-in mechanism to thrive and flourish. However, Price does recognise that people's seemingly lazy behaviour tends to stem from other personal issues. When we ask these questions more precisely, it is easier for our brain to process the issues since we can identify the individual components. This will enable us to address the behaviours directly, compassionately and empathetically, instead of dispensing judgments from an ivory tower with our one-track mind. Perfectionism is a personality trait that refuses to accept any standard other than perfect. These individuals crave for perfect results every single time without the need for drafts or trials. Understandably, this could sabotage an individual's ability to be productive, but more importantly, cripple an individual's sense of well-being. Some of the most sagely advice to stop being a perfectionist is to lower your expectations. Place some sort of constraints such as time and just do the work, and eventually there'll be enough work to edit. At least this way, an individual has something to show for it instead of a blank page as in the case of writing, or a voice to be edited in the case of this video. The reason why it is so difficult to accept a lower standard is that it causes cognitive pain and mental anguish over subpar work as perceived by you. It is not the case that a person is trying to be a perfectionist, but more so they are trying to avoid the psychological pain that is caused by their cognitive dissonance or self-contradiction. In this case, it's the discomfort or avoidance resulting from the conflict of believing all their work must be perfect and forcing themselves to do imperfect work while feeling the angst that it's most likely not going to happen straight off the bat. Imagine that you have the ability to meet certain expectations, but for whatever reason unknown to you, this does not happen. I say imagine because it is a perception that perfectionists have of their own abilities. There may be an element that's amiss in their skill sets or relevant information that they're not aware of. This is drastically different from someone being incompetent. Therefore, to them, there is no reason for suboptimal performance. However, we all know that we don't know what we don't know. And so when we try to short circuit the world without understanding the current flow, we end up with a burnt project. So how do we deal with this psychological pain so that we can have more flashes of brilliance? Well, let's think about it for a second. How do people build their muscles at the gym? How do we learn to swim? Or how do we learn to get better at a job? The reality is, at a certain point, there simply is no shortcut or easy path. We just have to embrace the discomfort and get on with it. However, to make it more cognitively palatable, Barbara Oakley, PhD, mentioned in the book Learning How to Learn that research has shown that this psychological pain only occurs for a short period of time, roughly 20 minutes or so. So once we get going, the pain slowly disappears. This will release us from perfection's grip and allowing us to keep plodding away in the flow. This will allow us to accumulate drafts or trials, which will be refined at a later stage into higher standards of work. World-renowned copywriter Joseph Sugarman often said that his first draft is normally terrible, but it's what he can do during the edits that produces the results and making him one of the best copywriters in the world. The only decision a perfectionist will have to make is whether it's worth dealing with the 20 minutes of receding cognitive pain for that handsome payout in productivity, or avoid it altogether. The rest is about editing or refining the work at a later stage once a draft has been written or the test run has been run. Get out and get it done, and everything will fall into place. This is David Lindsay from Phenom Leap Education. Discover your possibilities.